Hi, I'm Sandy. Thank you for joining me today on Ancestry Roads. This is where the stories of Appalachia are. You can probably tell I am just grinning from ear to ear. I am so excited about today's webcast. It's a very, very rare day that I will book two webcasts back to back, but this is that rare day because we have a very special guest with us today. As you all know, West Virginia is one of my loves, and my ancestors are from there. So I have got a West Virginia coal miner to come and join us and talk to us about coming into a company coal town. If you don't know what a company coal town is, it's basically a town where a coal mine company has brought in the homes, built the homes, created the environment, the community, the neighborhood for the workers. And you've probably seen movies, you've heard tales, even on songs, you probably have heard something called the company store. And this particular town, Itmann, West Virginia, has the coal castle, and it happens to be for sale. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes as well. So, how do you like the new opening? I hope you guys liked it. You're going to see it for the whole month of May because we are talking about coal mining in Appalachia during May 2023. If you missed our first part, it was on mountaintop removal. Please make sure to check our channel, subscribe so you don't miss one. And today we are going to start with growing up in Itmann, West Virginia, a company coal town. Stay tuned because this will be a fairly short webcast, but stay tuned because at 3 p.m. Eastern, about an hour from now, we're going to have Bob come back and talk to us about his life as a West Virginia coal miner. You will not believe the stories that Bob has to share with us today. I want to mention as well that Itmann is in lower West Virginia. It would be more kind of in the central Appalachia area. So if those of you that have regions, you'll know where that is. I want to introduce Bob. So if we'll have Bob come into our webcast, and Bob moved to Itmann when you're about 2 years old, right, Bob?
Yes, ma'am.
And you've been pretty much a coal miner for life for your entire adult career. But we're going to talk right now about Itmann and your experiences there. So thank you so much for coming in today. I really appreciate it. And I should also mention that I know Bob, and a lot of you that are in chat would know Bob from something called the Appalachia Project on 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪�ึ ancestors with ancestors' roots live there now, or just a love of Appalachia. What we do is we are genealogists working on creating full profiles of Appalachians, and starting with our own ancestors. I also know Bob from working on 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪 with the mining disasters project on 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪. And I definitely want you to stay tuned for that because Bob and I are going to talk a little bit about that in the next webcast. So hold tight with that. And Bob, let's see what Itmann looked like when you moved in. So that's pretty much Itmann, West Virginia when you moved in, right?
Yes, maybe probably maybe 10 years after this picture. I would say that was a 1940s picture.
And do you remember which house was yours?
I'll try. If you go up behind the company store, it would be just maybe center left. It was a 2-story house. I remember that much. I was young, but it was a 2-story house, and the house looking at it now to the right was also a 2-story house. I think there were 3 or 4 2-story houses.
And these were all houses that the company, this was Pocahontas Coal at the time, right?
Yes, ma'am. I heard they built the houses in Huntington, and they were brought in by rail, and then they were assembled, there at the the coal camp.
And this was specifically to keep the workers nearby and their families nearby so they would be on time or they would be part of a coal community?
I would assume that was the reason they did it, because early on, there weren't that many people to live in the area, so that there were a lot of folks that were brought in from other places. I know that our neighbors were. I know one neighbor was Hungarian, and
so this was multicultural. This wasn't just West Virginians. These were that you had some immigrants. I know that we had whites, we had blacks, we had immigrants, we had people coming to look for jobs because this was an area that really wasn't populated a lot when it first started. I believe Itmann started around, I would say 1918 is when people started moving in. Well, I tell you what, let's back up a bit. So can you tell us and describe how you and your family moved into Itmann, and about what year was that?
We moved there in 1951, and we had lived in Raleigh County, and my dad had first taken a job at a mine in Raleigh County, but it was low coal. But my aunt and uncle came to Itmann, and they lived a little over to the right, farther up the hill. And I think my uncle told him that the coal was a lot higher, and it was a newer, more automated place. And I believe that's what brought my dad there.
And then so you guys came in, and this is no longer there. There's a newer equipment there, I guess now. But was this what it looked like when you were a child and when your dad worked there?
I believe that is the old Itmann prep plant.
And then tell us, like, when you moved in, I remember you sharing a story as you moved in about how what your grandfather did, but also your mom had an interesting story about moving in. Could you share that with us?
Yes, I don't know what kind of car we had before, but I think my dad had driven like a company vehicle before. But when we moved there, my mother said my grandfather, he was I guess he would be a Sam's Club guy today, because everything he bought it in bulk, and gave him an old car. It was like a model Ford car that had the running boards and all that. And my mother said he had tied, sacks of potatoes, sacks of apples and produce, and they were hanging all over the car. And she told my dad that we weren't going to move down there till after dark, because she didn't want the people in the community seeing us coming in there. Like later on, she said we looked like the 𝗪𝗲𝗡 hillbillies coming in.
Because your grandfather had loaded you up with all the supplies.
Right.
So did you guys go in and move in after dark?
I believe we did. I was only about 2 then, but I remember a lot of the things early on. And I noticed you said that they were asking about the indoor plumbing.
Yes. And so when this house was here, your family moves in, I assume, did they pay rent?
Well, I think everything was rent. And I sent a picture of my dad's, one of his pay stubs.
Yeah.
And it was an envelope, and on the back of that envelope, everything that would come out of his check was there. So
they would take it out.
They take the rent, out for the rent, and even like the food and clothing and furniture, and the doctor bill, things like that would come directly out of his check before he got his pay.
And hang tight, everybody, because I think that that picture is coming up in our second part, where we will talk to Bob about working at the coal mine in Itmann. So hold on, because it's a very interesting pay stub. When I saw it, I was amazed at the amount of money he made and the amount of money he brought home. So if that's not a good teaser for you guys to come back for the second part of this, I don't know what is. But it was a really interesting idea of what they can take out of your paycheck. Now, this building that you're looking at on screen, you see then and then now 2013. And I want to thank Bob. Bob actually went and provided us some of these current pictures as well. This is known as Coal Castle to a lot of people in West Virginia. It is for sale. It is $499,000. It's in pretty rough shape inside. I actually had somebody do a phone video tour with me that I chose not to share because it was too long and kind of too jumpy. But do you remember going to the store for all your supplies?
Sure. That's where everybody went, and even later on after we moved, we still my dad and myself, we both still work for the company, and the folks there would make a trip to New York, and they would bring back some really nice things, as good as you could buy or better than you could buy in bigger towns even. And so
Interesting. And this had a lot. This was, I think you said that the doctor was there, maybe a barber shop, a store, a little grocery, anything you needed, clothes, furniture.
Right. Now the doctor's office was in a house across the street. There were several nicer houses along the highway.
Mm-hmm.
And then back from the picture that there was a quite a bit larger house where the mine superintendent where he lived. But now the company store, it sold everything from food and clothing, toys, sold a lot of guns that men bought for hunting. And now looking at the picture that's there now,
Mm-hmm.
in the middle, the road went back under that it's like kind of like a covered bridge there. But when you went inside, it was like a courtyard, and around the side was like a loading dock. And if you bought when you bought your groceries or furniture, there's the elevator brought your stuff down, and you would bring your merchandise out from under that area there.
Now, did you feel that this was the company store that you see in movies and, stories, that it was extremely overpriced, you were forced to go here type of thing? Because as part of my project with Ancestry Roads Webcast is to change the narrative in West Virginia in West Virginia and Appalachia. But a lot of people, when you hear company coal town or company store, they think that you've got no other choices. You cannot go anywhere else. You have to only buy from here. And we're talking about, let's say, 1950s. This was still a company store, right?
It was still a company store, but I believe that mining had got to the point that they were doing things to maybe entice people to come, because they, with the unions and things,
Mm-hmm.
in order to entice, people to come to work, they may have, gotten away from, even earlier on, they had scrip, and the only place you could spend your money was at their store, But
did you feel the prices were extravagantly high, or that Hollywood tends to portray?
Right. I not at all. I thought that, they were really like competitive prices, maybe just a little bit higher, but you know, you had instant, you know, the man that worked there, he had instant credits, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they were
Because
sure that,
they knew, and they knew, I guess, as part of also growing up and living in the coal town, they knew you, and your handshake was as good as your word in a lot of times.
right. And I still remember the ladies that there were 3 or 4 ladies that worked in there, and I still remember them to this day. You know, a lady by the name of 𝗪𝗲𝗯𝗰𝗵𝗶𝗍, she worked in like in the women's clothing, and well, there's a couple more, and I can't recall their names right now, but I can see their faces. I know them, and you know,
So you were all like a neighborhood family.
right? Yes, absolutely.
Now your houses, when you moved in, there was no indoor plumbing, correct?
No, I recall that our house, between our house and the Hungarian family, I remember them. Their last name was 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪, but I believe it was 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪, because quite a while back, before we even thought about this, I had did some 𝗦𝗁𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪 work, and I found it.
Mhm.
But anyway, there was an outhouse, a toilet, and there was a hand pump, uh, and you get water there. But
So was the hand pump shared by several residents?
I believe it was,
Yeah.
shared by at least our 2 families, I know. But I know my dad had put water into our house, because I remember in the winter, it had burst, and he was using the old black cloth-based tape. I was trying to keep it from leaking. Uh, but
It
but the houses, they had probably a couple of different fireplaces in them. But by the time we got there in the early 50s, people were using the big, they call what they call warm morning stoves, like a potbelly stove.
yeah.
And whether you use that stove or the fireplace, you use coal to, to heat with.
That makes sense. You were right there.
Right. And I remember there was no TV, because that, living in those areas, it's really hard to get TV reception even today.
Yeah.
But my dad and a neighbor by the name of Johnny Carter lived the next row up, was also an electrician. He and my dad, they strung a cable. I remember it looked like 2 fine wires with like a glass insulator. It looked like a little ladder, but they strang that to the top of that mountain and put an antenna up there. And so we were the only 2 families that had TV.
So wait, when you say the top of the mountain, let me go back. So we're talking the top of that mountain?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
And once we got the TV in, I remember some of the programs. There was a program called 𝗁𝗁𝙩𝙀.
Mm-hmm.
Then kids, you had 𝗤𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪 and Mr. Green Jeans. And
You must have been a popular person that everybody must have wanted to go to your house to see
I tell you
the
how
TV
popular
shows.
we were. If there was like wrestling or something like that,
Yeah.
people would come and be looking in our windows. And my mother and dad would just open the windows and let people watch TV.
That's funny. And probably any major event, they were probably right there. Well, let's go over to the Tilley house and let's see what the news is on it. I know that you shared too that you've had fond memories. This was a lot like any neighborhood you might find today. The kids were out playing. You played. There was not a lot of the Hollywood scare and fear of living in a coal town. You guys just, your dad worked there, and the start of your life kind of as school and everything was there before you moved, right?
Right.
And
Like
was there a lot of kids?
there were a lot of kids, and my closest, people I remember was my cousins. Had a couple of cousins that lived close there, and all wasn't completely good because I'd have to walk a little, the street or little road behind us would go out. Those houses on that next row up, they were on a little higher on the hillside, and they had high porches. And those kids would get rocks just waiting for somebody to come by. So they, I'm a 4 or 5 year old kid.
I guess some kids never change throughout the years. Well, okay. Let me ask you this then. How was it determined who lived where? So you mentioned there were some nicer homes up on the street itself by the coal castle, the company store. Were those more of the supervisors or foremen that lived in those? Was there some type of system where they rated who gets which house?
Well, I know the mine superintendent. He had a much larger home than everybody else did, and the doctor, the company doctor. Now he had one house had his doctor's office in it, and then I think the next house was his personal home. And then there was a gas station, which would be it was just space in the company store. Then below it, there were 3 more houses. And I'm not sure what those positions those folks had, but I would say that they were mine foremen or something like that.
Something. And then I'm going to ask Allie, who's in our chat right now, or Andrea, excuse me. She kind of moderates the Facebook page. You might be from Itmann, and she grew up in Itmann as well. So I want to bring her conversation into here as well. So Andrea, if you have any comments that you'd like to share about your life growing up in Itmann, please do share with us. So how many of the houses, between you and Andrew might be able to answer this, not all the houses survived, from what I understand. A lot did, though, and a lot are still standing, and they do have indoor plumbing before Hollywood comes calling and saying that it doesn't. So I think a good portion still are there. But does a coal company own them, or has ownership transferred? And I don't know, Bob, if you know that, or maybe Andrea knows that, if the people were able to actually buy the houses, because I know that coal has come and gone a little bit here, but it came back real recent. A company came in.
I think all the homes are owned by individuals now.
Okay. And I know the store that we're looking at here, the big store, the castle, it was owned for a while. It had multiple uses. I think at one point it was also a homeless shelter. And it's interesting that a politician owns it now. I don't remember who. I won't go into it because I try to avoid politics as much as possible in the show. But it's interesting because what I would be curious about is, how long can this building stay? Is it still in good shape?
Right now, it has what I would call good bones. But I noticed when I took the pictures you showed a moment ago from the side.
Yeah, let me bring that back.
The roof is beginning to cave in in places, and if someone would get it now, but it could be restored, but it's going.
Well, this brings us to a good question then. somebody did ask, Nick asked, what do you think should go in the company store? Like, is there any plans? Have you heard any rumors? I know, and when we talked in the Appalachia project on WikiTree on their Discord, we talked about this a couple days ago. Someone mentioned this would be great for a winery or some type of outdoor activity, bed and breakfast, hostel, something like that, where people could go hiking or do some other activities that are well known in West Virginia. Do you have any thoughts about what could go there, or have you heard any rumors?
Yes, I do. The adjoining town of Mullins, it's already converting from a mining railroad town
Mm-hmm.
into a ATV type area, and lots of folks are coming in from out of state and bringing four-wheelers and things like that. And there's a 𝗪𝗲𝗪𝗶𝗄𝘁 trail that there's
Yeah.
access there, and the one of the accesses is at near the early Itmann mines. The first portal that they had is near there, but it would only be a mile from that building, and you could put in rooms to rent, and
It seems like you could really do a lot with it. Now, I know Bob has recently seen it. I've only in person. I've only seen it with somebody giving me a tour a week ago via video, via their phone, and it is heavily damaged inside, and windows, are smashed, so need replaced. But someone that buys this for 500,000, which is what it's listed for, they're going to have put in a substantial amount of money, I think, to bring this back up to code. But I can see this, and this is a part of our history as well in the stonework. You don't want to lose something like this. This could be repurposed, and I hope that it is. And I hope that, Bob, if you find out before any of us do, you'll let us know, because it's beautiful and it has a lot of memories.
it does. And looking at the picture there now, where you see the right section with the white there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, upper windows was where they sold furniture, and then the next section down was was where, when you went in, there was like women's clothing was on the left and men's was on the right, and then the checkout counters are straight on, and I think they sold guns and things to the left. Then in the back was the groceries, and they had a butcher shop, and
So they had it all. It really, how far was, like, let's go back to maybe 1960s, 1970s. How far was the nearest grocery store?
well, Mullins is only, say, 4 to 5 miles.
Okay.
So there were a lot of little grocery stores there.
And
So,
this is the church is on the left,
yes, ma'am, that's
and
the
the
church.
a school on the right.
And the old Itmann, that's the old Itmann grade school on the right.
It's funny because my producer looked at it and goes, "I'm not sure if that's a jail or a school," but he's like, "Either way, kids probably feel the same about it."
No, but I never went to school there. The time when I was 7 years old, but then we'd moved to Mullins because my mother wanted the indoor plumbing, and so I started. They built a new grade school that year in Mullins, so I went there my first year. But I came back to Itmann when I got out of high school and lived there a little while after when I started my mining career.
And you came back. That sounds like a good transition. So I want to point out to everybody that this is just growing up in Itmann in a company called Town. I really do want to make this clear. A couple of things that Bob mentioned. Bob had also discussed this with me back and forth in an email, because I am really trying to change the narrative on Appalachia. I don't want everybody to walk away thinking that a company in Coal Town is always bad, like you see in Hollywood movies. Bob had shared that, the times that he did play with the other kids. It's a multicultural community. He just mentioned that the store was fair priced. It wasn't outrageous. They weren't trying to really come after you and your paycheck. And we will see his dad's paycheck in the next episode. But it was kind of a normal place to live. It just happened to have a coal mine right there, and it was built by a coal company. So I would hope that everybody takes away from this that there isn't anything outrageous here. This was just a normal way of life. And this is a normal way of life a lot of times in Appalachia, and especially West Virginia. As you know, southern West Virginia does have a lot of the coal mines, and especially back in the day. And it just made sense to have a company store. This company store just happens to be called a castle, and it had a lot going on for it. Before we leave, just in the next minute, I do want to bring up the one place study real quick. So for those of you that are more interested in Itmann, I want to thank the One Place Studies Guild. It's an international guild. They rushed this into their database, and they have included Itmann One Place Study into their international global database for us. And when you go here, you will also click on a link, and that will bring you to a website called 𝗪𝗪𝗃𝘁𝘃. And the reason why that's important, if my producer can bring up the 𝗪𝗪𝗃𝘃 link, is, as I mentioned, that is how I met Bob. And through 𝗪𝗪𝗃𝘃, we were working with the disasters, the mining disasters. And we're going to share that in the next episode. But I want to bring up 𝗪𝗪𝗃𝘃. Let me see if I can do this real quick. Give me 1 second here. Let's see if I can add. Okay, there we go. So if you are interested in Itmann, if you have a curiosity about Itmann, if you lived in Itmann, if you are living in Itmann, any of the above, I welcome you to join Bob and I in this venture of 𝗪𝗪𝗃𝘃.com. It's where it's one tree. We do one profile, a full profile with sources of their life and document their life. But what we're also doing is taking it one step further in trying to document everybody that lived in Itmann. And it's called a one place study. It's on 𝗪𝗪𝗃𝘃. Reach out to me, reach out to Bob, go to 𝗪𝗪𝗃𝘃, type in search Itmann, West Virginia. You'll find it. Also down in the description, you will find a link to it. And we invite you to help us build out the town so we can give this town a full complement of who the people were that worked there, that lived there, and enjoyed the Itmann community as well. A couple of things before I let you go. And you have a couple, I think we got all the questions. I'll ask my producer, but I do believe someone special has joined us. And Christy mentioned that when she was in 9th grade, my mom, I have a grandma named my mom too, took me to shop for some of my school clothes at that company's store. And that would have been about 1985. And I would be curious to see when the store closed too. So welcome, Christy. I know that you are special here. And Calvin, your dad's SAR friend. So see, family's meeting family. This is pretty cool. So, and I expect Calvin and Christy to come in and help us. Now, is your daughter already on 𝗪𝗪𝗃𝘃 helping you with your ancestor profiles?
I think she may have added a few things, but I'm not sure what but she's interested in the things I send her.
That's great, because we want the next generation to take over our work. We need somebody to take our files and take it on it. And I love this. Thank you, Christine. My dad is the best genealogist I know. I invite everybody that's watching this to go check out this video, Itmann, West Virginia, Itmann, West Virginia One Place Study, either on the International One Place Study Guild or on wikitree.com, and help us build out this community. I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to ask everybody, go get a refreshment, go get something to eat, a snack, a drink, and come back and see me and Bob in about 25 minutes if you're watching live. If you're not watching live, then all you got to do is click on the next video and it will come up, because the next video is going to feature Bob again with A Day in a Life, a West Virginia coal miner. And if you have coal miners in your family and your ancestry, you don't want to miss this, because Bob has a lot of great stories to share. So bye for now. We'll see you back in just a few minutes.